Welcome to an information session for the Penn Master of Behavioral and Decision Sciences program. Welcome, good morning. My name is Chris Nave. I'm the Associate Director of the program here at Penn. I'm excited to spend the next hour or so with many of you to discuss more of the program. This is an interactive information session, and so you have the opportunity to ask questions towards the end, and you can have queue up some questions throughout the time here. So you can use the chat feature if you're watching this through YouTube. And so to kind of kick things off, how about you tell me where you are streaming from currently? So if you can use your chat feature box, let me know where you are streaming from. We'll get started with the program. And while I'm waiting for people to let us know where they're streaming from, we're going to cover a little bit on the curriculum. We're going to highlight a lot of new information about our students and where they're coming from, what they're doing, what kinds of jobs they're getting into afterwards. We'll talk a little bit about the accolades and things that are going on with them. And so we'll kind of go through that process. Okay, great. So we have them coming in. So welcome from Germany and Charlottesville, Virginia, and Dubai, and Boston, and Michigan, Philly, and Vail, Colorado. Somebody from the UK, a couple people from Philly, San Diego. Very early in San Diego. Thank you for waking up with us. Minnesota. So welcome, everybody. As I will continue, but please feel free to let us know where you're streaming from as I go through this. So the MBDS program is the main purpose that we have is really kind of threefold. We're trying to understand the process behind decision making. We're looking at ways to create sustainable behavior change. And then we're also looking to translate academic research into actionable insights. And so this is a kind of a defining feature of behavioral science, behavioral and decision science. We're taking a lot of what is out there in data science and other industries, and psychology and political science and economics and behavioral economics. We're taking a lot of the theory, the quantitative rigor, and we're applying that, we're putting it together to try to create this sustainable behavior change and try to better understand how people make decisions. We have a threefold curriculum here. So we have a theoretical basis, a quantitative basis, and applied basis. So we want to make sure that students are equipped with the most kind of robust theories across all academic disciplines. So we want to break down those academic silos. My background is in psychology. I learned a lot in social psychology and personality psychology, but I didn't know, I had very little exposure to political science or how economists and behavioral economists and others looked at the world. And so our students come from a wide variety of backgrounds, and our curriculum also makes sure that students have broad theoretical frameworks that they can use to better understand decision-making and behavior change. We definitely have a very rigorous quantitative component. We want to make sure that students at least have a deep appreciation for measurement, design, evaluation, understanding things like data science, how to model, at least having, an appreciation for modeling data. Can you interpret what a data scientist or a quantitative team is doing, and can you interpret it for a wider audience? Can you interpret it for policymakers, for executives? That's definitely a big focus and feature of our program. And then we have an applied component. We want to make sure that what you're doing in the classroom translates into something outside of the classroom. So we have a lot of opportunities for you to demonstrate your knowledge, whether it's through design challenges, through our capstone process, internships, and many, many more opportunities. So welcome. So we have people still letting us know, coming from Tokyo and Indonesia and Washington and Turkey. Great, welcome. So I wanted to share with you a quote from our faculty and founding director, Christina Bicchieri. And she notes that participating in this unique interdisciplinary program will prepare you to face the multiple challenges of modeling, measuring, and intervening on social behaviors in a variety of real-world contexts, both local and global. And so to kind of unpack a bit of that, this is a very unique interdisciplinary program. We're a one calendar year program. We're housed in the School of Arts and Sciences, so we're not within a business school, we're not in a policy school. We have a very, very broad framework that students can get in behavioral science that they can then apply to a wide variety of domains. And you'll see kind of the variability of our students and their backgrounds and the types of jobs that they want to get afterwards. So MBDS students, there's a few things that we hope by the time that you're done with us that you'll be able to do. And so a few of them are up here. So one of them really is translating academic content into actionable deliverables. This is something that a lot of the specialized academics, those with PhDs that do a lot of research training, they may have a very narrow focus and they may be unable to kind of communicate their work into something actionable that could be kind of usable, whether it's for city government or for a company that's trying to better understand the customer experience. That's where our students can come in. They can translate that dense academic work and figure out how it can be turned into an intervention or some kind of a policy going forward. Our students can design lab and field experiments to test hypotheses. They can learn to model how individuals and groups make decisions. They can get into the behavioral and neural foundations of decision making. They can create and analyze computational models of social emergence. And then they can use network analysis to understand how behavior can spread or dissolve. And network analysis is a really kind of hot area these days. Our program focuses a lot on collective behavior change. So the fact that we don't make decisions in a vacuum, I don't make a decision about whether or not to go to a doctor on my own necessarily. I have a wife and son and other people that influence my decision. And we can map that out through a process called network analysis. We can see who are the influencers in my decision-making process. And if we understand that, we can better create sustainable behavior change, better understand how people make decisions. So that is definitely a unique area of focus for our students in our program. We are in our third year, and after listening to our advisory board and listening to our students, the kind of fun part of a new program and a new field of behavioral science is we get to iterate. And so our curriculum has changed a little bit this year, in 2019. We now have 5 core classes. You still get 3 electives. The 3 electives can be taken anywhere on campus, and we'll kind of get to that in a minute. But for the 5 core classes, here's what they are. We have a method-based class on behavioral economics, so you really get into the methods and measurement of the process. You go through using Amazon MTurk and Qualtrics, and you design a group project together and an extension of academic work, and you really try to work through how that extension may be useful outside the lab. We have a social norms class that we're now going to be calling norms and nudges. It gets at the collective behavior change component, but also gets at what a lot of people are familiar with in behavioral science and behavioral economics, the nudge and nudge-based approaches. And so the course will broadly cover both what nudges are and when they're successful and useful, and when social norms messaging is more maybe impactful. And there's a thing called norm nudging that you can use where you're kind of highlighting both features to better impact behavior change. We have a public policy and applications course that even if you are not wanting to go into public policy, it's really, really important to have an appreciation for policy and how they are created, how they get implemented, and how they get evaluated. Most companies, especially larger corporations, have a component where they are working in the nonprofit space. They're teaming up on important initiatives and having an awareness of that. So whether it's financial literacy or environmental concerns, it's a component to see how behavioral science may influence this field. It's an important component. And then we also have judgments and decisions. So it's really, really crucial for our students, people that graduate from our program, to understand all the different biases, heuristics, and processes that go on during the decision-making process. And so you get a lot of cognitive and social psychology principles put into that class. And then finally, you have a quantitative core that you can choose one of the following. You can either take a statistical reasoning class. That statistical reasoning course is done exclusively in R. R is a free platform that you can use that a lot of companies are using, a lot of nonprofits and NGOs are using to analyze data, to create really nice visual displays of data. And so you can say by the end of your time in the statistical reasoning course that you have proficiency in R. It's not expected that you have any before you join the course, but by the end you'll feel pretty familiar and comfortable with it. We also have a data science and quantitative modeling class, and this is a unique course where you're really getting into translating what data scientists are doing. And so you're doing things like first understanding AI and machine learning and some of the different principles that go on there, but you're also getting into all of the different ways that analysts, quantitative analysts, data science teams can analyze data and model data. And you'll learn about the pros and cons of the different approaches so that you're better informed. You can also better translate the kind of the dense output from a lot of the data scientist teams that kind of create these reports. You're going to be the one likely to turn it into the one-page deliverable, the best visual display, the graphical display that may convince upper management or executives, policymakers to maybe create a new change or a new program within a particular company or field. I'm highlighting how truly interdisciplinary our program is. So in our second cohort, we had students take classes all over the campus from a number of different schools. And these are there was 114 unique courses that students took all over, including at places like the Wharton School, the School of Arts and Sciences, the School of Social Policy and Practice, Graduate School of Education, the School of Medicine, communications, engineering, nursing, and the School of Design. So our students are getting very, very broad electives that they can use. Each student can take 3 electives. They can be anywhere on campus. We don't have any one prescribed path that students have to go with their electives. Most of our students are not coming as blank slates. You all have experience from undergrad, your undergraduate time, from maybe internships. Maybe you have years of experience in industry. We are aware of that, and we mentor and work with you in our advising process to see what are some gaps that you may have that we can better kind of plug by certain kinds of classes. So what skill sets do you want to have? Are you looking to make a transition or a pivot from your current work that you're doing into another area? And what are some of the identifiable skills or knowledge bases that you need to kind of get to that pivot? And so we'll work with you. It might mean that you're taking a finance class paired with a communications class, paired with a policy class. It might mean that you're taking all 3 classes that are more framework-oriented, like design thinking and some of the other different approaches. Here's a sample of classes that our students, that are fairly popular with our students over the first 2 years. And so design thinking or integrated product design program, a lot of students do that, or need finding is another one. These are giving you some qualitative frameworks to think about people and how they interact with products and the environment around them. We have students take several classes from the organizational dynamics program here at Penn, including another kind of framework-oriented class like the art of divergent thinking. We have a number of students taking a behavioral economics and health class that's really, really popular with Alison Butenheim on campus. We have the Center for Health Incentives and Behavioral Economics here at Penn. Very, very cutting edge, and seeing how the behavioral economics principles get applied into the healthcare sector is a really, really important contribution that Penn has, and our students have access to that, which is really exciting. There's a behavioral finance class that a lot of students at least look into, especially if they're looking in the finance domain, that Wharton offers. There are other interesting classes in like sociology and demography that students take. Here's a few others that you can kind of see. So evidence-based crime prevention, if that's kind of an area of interest for you, that's offered through the criminology, but there's also law school courses that you can take. You can take an intro to energy policy, a modeling choice behavior class, predictive analytics if you want to go more on the quantitative path. You can take a modern data mining class to kind of round out your other core classes that you're taking with us as well. And again, these are just samples. We had 114 unique courses last year alone. The Penn catalog has 1,000 or more classes that you can really choose from, that we work very closely with you to advise you on what might be the best options. We had a busy year in 2019 alone, where we had a number of different representatives from companies visit campus to talk specifically with our students. And these are companies that are either exclusively behavioral science oriented or that have behavioral science components that are beginning to be more and more embedded in their company. So you have like one of the originators in behavioral science, the Behavioral Insights team, that works pretty closely with us. We have Ideas 42, which you could kind of think of as like a boutique consultancy firm, one of the originators in this behavioral science field. RARES in the conservation field, they do a lot of behavioral science as it applies to sustainable fishing and farming. People Science, it's a good website where there's a lot of content about behavioral science is applied more to like the workplace. That Jeff Chrysler, who's a co-author of Dan Ariely's Dollars and Cents book, is the editor-in-chief of. We have had representatives from the Center for Health Incentives and Behavioral Economics visit us, the Center for Advanced Hindsight, and the behavioral science team at Allstate, among others. So we have we don't meet every single week for professional development, but our students, it's kind of mandated that we have 2 or 3 times a month we meet, we bring in speakers to kind of talk with us about behavioral science. So they'll give you realistic job previews about what it's like to be in a role like what they have, or what they're looking for in candidates for positions that they may be having internships or jobs for. We do a lot of we work a lot with career services on campus. Penn has a really, really great career services where you can get advising on your resume, on your LinkedIn profile, how to network effectively. And that benefit through Penn Career Services is something that you have forever. So even after you leave the program, if you want to make a pivot or you're looking for a promotion and you want to kind of justify that, you can work with our career services as a Penn alum to help get you those skills that you need. Last year was the first year for us to really kind of go all in on these design challenges. Really exciting. We worked with 4 different companies. So we worked with Microsoft, Prudential, Benefits Data Trust, and Ipsos. So very different companies, very different objectives in different spaces like tech and insurance and marketing and policy. And so about 75%, 3/4 of our students took part in at least one design challenge. And for about 8 weeks in the spring term, we partner students up in teams. They work with a contact at one of these companies. They have a clear set of deliverables of what they're supposed to be doing. So it might be something as simple as literature review, and making some recommendations for where they should go next. It might be designing a pilot study. It might be analyzing some data that they've been sitting on and they don't really know what to do with. And so they vary in terms of how quantitative they are, how strategy-oriented they might be, or it may be some that you're helping on the kind of the implementation stage of it. These are great because you can showcase the skill sets that you have and the content that you've learned from the classroom, and show it to a particular company. The likelihood of them wanting to work with you afterwards, whether it's through an internship, whether it's through our capstone process, or maybe through a job, it increases because they know you, they've seen the quality of your work. And even if you don't want to work officially with any of these companies going forward, you have this in your portfolio. So in addition to the knowledge base that you're getting from our classes, you can show that you've participated in these internal and external design challenges, and you're showing your thought process. What was the slide deck that you used? How did you attempt to solve a problem for a particular company? that's an important set of skills that you can bring to the job market. And as a more professionally based program, I'd say 80-90% of our students are looking to go into industry right away, right after, at least right as their next step. And so that's important for us to have in addition to our normal academic curriculum. Showing a tweet from our newest instructor that we've designed this really cool consulting class. So we're having a consulting in the behavioral science course this spring. We're piloting it with 20 students from diverse backgrounds, and it's going to be a really, really, really deep dive into the consulting process, how consulting and behavioral science are interrelated, and we are going to work very hard to make sure that by the end of that course, that again, the skill sets that you have, with whether it's the softer skills like teamwork, communication, those kinds of components, or the kind of strategic thinking, being exposed to all of the different frameworks, or at least many of the different frameworks that are out there. So how does a place like the Behavioral Insights team solve problems? How does they use the EAST framework, and we walk through that through this course. How does Ideas 42 or Rare or some of these other different companies, how do they attempt to solve problems that might be behavioral? And so by the end of the course, you will have a deeper appreciation and awareness of all these different frameworks. You'll have practice using them. You'll get a lot of practice in the kind of softer skills and teamwork. You'll be working with companies to provide, again, some kind of actionable deliverable at the end of that. And that is something that we will have going forward for our students that want to join us in future years. We're also really, really excited to be a part of the Action Design Network. And so we are in the Philadelphia chapter. We're the 13th or 14th city that Action Design has. Action Design is a nonprofit that was co-created by Steve Wendell at Morningstar and others. It's a really, really great opportunity for our students to network with people in Philly and the Philadelphia-based area on a number of really important and interesting topics in behavioral science. This is also a great opportunity for our alumni to come back and give presentations as behavioral science experts or leaders, as thought leaders. This is a really, really great practice for our current students to help either design and decide who to invite for these types of meetups, or practice talking to a non-academic audience. So we work through meetup.com. We have our own Action Design Philly group. We have about 270 members right now and growing. We just started a few months ago. You're welcome, particularly if you're in the Philly-based area. You can find us on meetup.com. If you type in Action Design Philly, you can request access, and you can see the different types of events that we do. We just concluded with a health panel about how to make health interventions smarter. It was a really, really great panel that we did in September, and we had four practitioners. Well, we had one practitioner and 3 researchers from a variety of different backgrounds really share their insights. So how do physicians trained in decision science think how interventions might be better designed? How do those trained more in public health or that work for Ideas 42 or work in implementation science, how do they think, what kinds of strategies and tips might be effective in making interventions smarter and more efficient? This is something also, too, that our students can take part in, the designing, and we have committees, student-based committees that students can be a part of. So a number of you may be familiar with our webpage. I'm highlighting some of the elements from our webpage. So this is some of our affiliated faculty. You'll scroll down and you'll see that we have about a dozen of them. I'm really excited. I would say check our affiliated page in the next few weeks. We have a couple new faculty members that are hyper relevant to behavioral science that will be joining us on the page, and we'll make announcements on our social media. But we have, for example, our founding director, Christina Bicchieri. We have Jonathan Barron, who's as an emeritus. He's one of the pioneers of the judgment and decision-making cognitive psychology movement. Renad Bidas, who is really, really kind of rock star in implementation science, which is this pre-intervention design. So before all of this money gets wasted in doing an intervention that was kind of designed poorly, can we get buy-in from a diverse audience for the people that we intend to serve before we create the intervention to make sure that we're going to do it effectively, that it can be sustainable going forward. And so among others, we have a really great affiliated faculty that work with our students in a variety of ways. So they may be teaching courses with our students, they may be coming to our professional development research meetings, they may be supervising our students for our capstone processes. We also have a number of current instructors that teach other courses for us. So one would be Nazli Bhatia. Nazli is an award-winning teacher and instructor on campus. She's also an expert in negotiation and strategy. She teaches two very, very popular classes with us. She teaches a negotiation behavior class, and then she teaches a power, persuasion, and influence class for our students. And these classes really help you kind of in the applied space. So how do you do the buyer-seller transactions? Which tips and strategies work and are effective? And the thing that she does that business schools and other areas don't necessarily cover in their curriculum is she gets into the why. So why might these strategies be effective? What does the psychology literature and other literature say is the mechanism behind why these different strategies or influence tactics may be effective? Eugen Demott teaches our methods and policy, our methods and measures class. He is a number of years of experience designing experimental behavioral economics research programs. And so he teaches our students really how to go about with the research process, how to read and interpret empirical articles, how to write referee reports. He has students going to a number of experimental and non-experimental talks on campus and writing them up and discussing them as a group. He has students looking at academic research and thinking of logical extensions. What would be an interesting next step? And is it something that we could scale and actually do a pilot of on campus throughout the duration of a semester? And why might it be important to look at? Enrique Fatas is another instructor. He teaches our public policy class. Enrique is a full professor at Loughborough in the UK, and he also teaches with them. He does a lot of research in behavioral economics, policy, and finance. We also have Ed Roisman. Ed Roisman has been teaching at Penn for a number of years. He was trained by Jonathan Barron and Paul Rozin, very, very famous psychology experts in decision science. And Ed has had a great career in academia and research and in teaching judgment and decision making. It's a very popular class that our students take. And then finally, one of our current instructors right now is Alex Shpenev. He has a master's degree in statistics from Wharton, and he has a PhD in demography. And he teaches our stats class and our data science class. And he also is one of the leading experts on campus in network analysis. So he really understands the collective behavior change, how to model and map it. And he's working with the Center for Social Norms and Behavioral Dynamics on campus that Christina Bicchieri is the founder of. That works with companies and nonprofits around the world, looking at specifically Alex's contribution is the network analysis and data analysis component to it. Want to highlight the capstone process. So the capstone experience, our students, you take 8 classes in the program with us, and then there's that final 9th independent study. You can kind of think of it like an independent study where you're working with somebody from campus. It could be somebody that you've taken a class with that you really value their skills and their knowledge, or it could be somebody else that would be very, very useful to a topic that you're looking to explore. And they mentor you throughout the process, and you're writing something for a more external and broader audience. You're not writing a dense academic thesis. You're writing either a consultant report, an impact report, a white paper. It might be like a handbook for how to leverage behavioral insights into a particular company. So it can be more consultant report oriented, more technical, and it's really, again, meant to be for a wider audience. So is this something that you could show a future job or people that are behind behavioral scientists or people science, and they would find what you wrote really, really interesting and useful. It also will have a rigorous component so that academics and researchers will be able to follow and go through and see that you've accurately discussed their theories and evaluated the research kind of effectively and figured out ways to bring it into industry. I'm highlighting just a sample, a small handful of the capstone projects that were recently completed over this summer of our second cohort. So you'll see how variable they are. There are a lot of different topics because our students come from a wide variety of backgrounds and they want to go into a wide variety of areas when they leave us. So behavioral science is a toolkit for social entrepreneurs, using behavioral science to improve digital health, using behavioral science and people analytics, which is more of a HR-based application. Behavioral science and energy, how can behavioral insights inform effective energy policy? One related to financial services. There was a behavioral science project related to U.S. Army recruiting challenges, and based off of this capstone project, Alex Willard, who's a major in the Army, he is now working with the Army on this very topic. So he's working with their marketing to figure out how they can improve some of their recruiting challenges. Others have studied things like the roles of cooperation for forecasting accuracy and team performance, how gender diversity and group performance relate to each other. And then there was a really cool project on trying to figure out how to quantify using behavioral interventions and the return on investment they might provide a particular company. So if there's a way that we can quantify this and show that having a behavioral science unit or set of individuals in a company will save the company a number of money, will create some new solutions that can be implemented, that could be a really great way of advancing the field. Highlighting some of, kind of bragging a little bit about our students and what they've been able to do and be a part of. And so every year Wharton, the Wharton School hosts a People Analytics Conference. People from all over the world come to this event. Again, it tends to be more HR related. And there are case competitions and a number of competitions that are open to students, graduate students from all over the world. People compete, very, very prestigious in terms of the number of groups and teams that perform. And students in our first two cohorts won the case competitions in year one and year two. And so, and they're winning it because they're coming from such different backgrounds and they're teaming up together. So our most recent group of winners, we had a student from Nigeria who was trained more in the kind of the health sector. We had somebody that was trained more in psychology that worked at Deloitte for a couple of years. And then we had somebody else that come from the Newhouse School of Communications at Syracuse. Magazine journalism is a major, and all of them came from very, very different perspectives. They took different elective courses with us, and their kind of qualitative frameworks that they decided to use and their thinking behind the displays of data and the data visualization were unique and really clearly stood out among some of the other teams that presented at the conference. Rare.org hosts a number of behavioral summits and events. And we had an event in March where we took 10 of our students to participate in a design challenge that was attempting to try to solve Inspira Health's need for their employees to really kind of like carpool. Like, how can we get our employees to carpool, to kind of be better for the environment? Are there any kinds of incentives or programs that the company could offer to make it more likely that their large number of employees would take part in carpooling? And we had students as a picture from the kind of the finals. We had a team of 3 of our students. They were one of 3 finalists, finalist teams. Their group name was called Shift Happens because it was about cars. And they had a lot of Beatles references in it, and they won rave reviews. They finished, they placed in the top 3, and they gave some really, really interesting insights on how to maybe improve the carpooling experience for a big client like Inspira Health. Every year on campus at Penn, they have the Ben Talks, Grad Ben Talks. This is similar to like a TED Talk style. We've been very successful, our students have been very successful in being able to present unique takes on how behavioral science can be applied. And so most recently, we had 2 students participate in the Grad Ben Talks. One of them was Connor Joyce. He presented on artificial intelligence and how it affects the workplace. And so this is a hot topic in like democratic debates and things that Andrew Yang and others are kind of talking about, how artificial intelligence, the kind of roboticized kind of nature of the workforce may impact jobs going forward. And so Connor gave a really interesting and nuanced talk on this process. And these talks, by the way, for nuance, they have to be about 5 minutes long. They're short, but they're supposed to be impactful. And Connor won kind of Best in Show for professional master's programs for this particular presentation. And then I'm showing our other winner, Lorena Lavano Gavidia. She's from Peru. She was featured very all over the press in Peru for winning. She won the Audience Choice Award for her take on harassment in high school, sexual harassment in high school, and how social norms messaging campaigns could be really, really useful and helpful to combat harassment at a really important time in teenagers' lives. So she did that, and those in Peru were really thrilled that she won. We have a conference presence all over. We go to a lot of the top behavioral science and business conferences. So just recently we're at the Behavioral Exchange in London. There were 1,200 members from all over the world, including several countrywide delegations that were a part of the experience. So that's something that both the program and students can kind of take part in. I'm showing off a little bit more. So Lorena was named a professional student dean scholar this year. She did a lot of work on the sexual harassment and social norms. And kind of what she brought to that. It was such a unique perspective that she won several accolades, presented at a number of research conferences, including the Grad Ben Talks while she was with us. Our new cohort, our third cohort, we have about 75 students coming from a wide variety of backgrounds. So our most recent kind of analysis, we put this up on LinkedIn, they come from 12 countries, over 15 different majors. We have 2 Fulbright scholars, one from Venezuela and one from Italy. We have an NSF graduate research fellow that has joined us. And then we have several students, about 60% of our students are coming from industry. They're not coming right out of undergrad, it's about 40%. The remaining about 60% or so are coming out of industry, and they're coming from very, very diverse backgrounds. So I'm cherry-picked some of the more interesting, unique ones, like firefighter. We have a firefighter this year. We have a physician from Japan. We have several consultants and UX designers, senior policy analysts, accountants, and strategists, as well as those that have worked in geophysics and healthcare and fashion and culinary management, as well as several entrepreneurs in our program. And so you really get at kind of the rich diversity of our students. That's definitely one of the highlights of our program. It's the favorite part of my job, is working with, talking to prospective students and hearing why they're interested in behavioral science, but also working with this diverse team of students, having them come together, work together to try to solve problems, whether it's through these design challenges, whether it's through our professional development meetings that we do with each other, seeing kind of how they connect, interact with each other, and create novel approaches to problem solving. Here's a quick sampling of some of the universities that students from our third cohort, where they're coming from. They're coming from all over the world, as you'll see. Maybe some of you are from here that are streaming today. We just recently had a norms and behavioral change workshop on campus. We had mainly academics, about 60 or so, come from all over the world to present really cutting edge work on social norms and behavioral change. But then we also had a really fun experience with a Behavioral Grooves podcast. So they're a non-academic podcast that talks about behavioral science. They interview academic researchers, and they think about ways of maybe applying their work to a broader audience. They give a platform for academics and researchers to talk about what they do that they might not normally have. So really a non-academic platform. And so they were here to interview some of our students and talk more about the program and talk with several of the academics and researchers that were here with us. We also had a really cool panel discussion that the program in particular was in charge of sponsoring. And so we had Michael Halsworth, who's the managing director for the Behavioral Insights team. We had Aaron Sherman, who's the vice president at Ideas 42. We had Eric Thulin, who's at RARE, he's a behavioral science lead at RARE. And then Anjali Chahani, who is in charge of the Philadelphia GovLab. And so it's the behavioral science initiative that's embedded in local government. So she works in the mayor's office, and they work to try to find ways to employ behavioral strategies, behavioral science, evidence-based strategies to improve the lives of Philly residents. So this could be things like, how do we get people to recycle or utilize bike lanes, or be more active in voting. And so they were talking about some of the challenges and opportunities in working with academics on behavioral science related topics. We most recently, just a couple weeks ago, we were in Dickinson College, and we had 20 students participate in a design challenge where we were trying to figure out how to create more plant-based options in dining halls. And this is the winning team. They beat out teams from 9 other schools from around the U.S. This group was named the Nudgetables. They were trying to get people to eat more plant-based options. And they were thinking about, using green plates, signifying that using green plates would be a cue to others in the dining hall that you are more kind of plant-based and focused. And then also Dickinson College, their colors are green, so kind of also indicates school pride. So they had a unique take on how to potentially solve this a climate, social responsibility kind of issue related to eating meat and offering more plant-based options. Okay, so I had a look at where our students most recently from our second cohort, this is just from our second cohort, and this is not the full list of our students, but where are they getting jobs? That's a very, very common question. And what kind of titles are they getting? So some of them are getting jobs with behavioral science titles. So we have Connor is at Microsoft My Analytics as a behavioral scientist. We have two students now that are full-time at the Center for Advanced Hindsight as behavioral researchers. We have others that have behavioral types of titles. And then we have others that are more in the kind of the consulting realm. They're in consulting or strategy. So they're working for Boston Consulting Group or Deloitte, Grant Thornton, Navigant. They're working for the Army as a strategist. More recent ones, so senior research analyst for JP Morgan Chase. We have a student who's a Venture for America fellow, which is more entrepreneurial, helping with startups. We have a product manager at Visa, global risk manager at BRF, which is a Brazilian-based bank, a director at AMC Global, senior market analyst for Pattern, and many more areas. So if we were to kind of figure out what types of titles and patterns are we seeing for students, consultant, strategist, and analyst tend to be ones that are pretty common. Ones that have like behavioral scientist or behavioral science, and there's something else following it, that's also fairly common in terms of titling. We're also seeing, though, those that are going into user and customer experience, management, finance, and other kinds of domains. You can check out, and we'll be updating this in the months ahead, definitely before the February 1st deadline. Some really cool student and alumni stories, where they're at now, what they did, what they thought about the program. And they're also, so you can kind of get a diverse feel for the types of students and who joins us. And then finally, so that I can leave time for some questions, run down the kind of the admissions process. Again, this is available on our website. February 1st is the admissions deadline. We do not have rolling admissions, so there's no competitive advantage of getting in before the February 1st deadline. But it's always helpful to get, you can always get your materials in. It will not be reviewed until after February 1st, but you're welcome to get it in. The portal is open now. We look at very closely, the admissions committee looks at your personal statement. So how do you think about behavioral science? Why do you want to why do you want to join us at Penn? What do you think you might want to do with behavioral science? Talk about your trajectory, kind of where you came from, where you want to go. We look very closely at your official transcripts, especially your most recent year or two in school. If you had some graduate schooling, or you have a graduate degree, we'd look at that as well. It's optional. You don't have to have a graduate degree to join us, but some do. We look very closely at your resume. So what have you done? What have you been doing, both in industry, or have you done any internships? What kinds of jobs have you been doing? What kind of skill sets do you have? We look at your letters of recommendation. We really don't look at your GREs or GMATs, so they're optional. And the reason why they're optional is they're not terribly predictive of success in a program like ours. And it's also, making somebody that's been in industry for a number of years study for and spend a lot of money on a test that doesn't have a whole lot of predictive validity of your success in a program like ours is why we really de-emphasize it. If you have it and you want to bring it into your package, your application package, there is an option to submit it, but it is not something that is weighed or looked at all that much by our admissions committee. And then also, if you're an international student, you have to make sure that you leave plenty of time to get your transcript certified through either WES or through Certifile. That can take several weeks, and so I would definitely make sure, if you are looking to apply to our program and you're international, that you're giving yourself enough time. And by early December, you're giving lots of time for a February 1st deadline. You can do it through the portal, so you don't have to get WES certification necessarily. If you apply, you can use the Certifile process, which kind of streamlines it a little bit. It may save a few days of time if you go that way. And then as an international student, if you're coming from a university where you may need a TOEFL score of English is not the primary language. So that's something that we look at as well. So with that in mind, this is our kind of interactive component, and we'll leave some time for some questions. And if we don't get to all of your questions today, I've posted our email address that you can reach out to us so that I can follow up with myself and our team. Also our website, our LinkedIn and Twitter accounts that you can look at and follow and for next steps. So with that in mind, do people have questions about the process or about the program that I can kind of help address and answer? I'm also looking to where people are streaming from still. So we have people coming from China and New York and DC and California and Ohio. So thanks for joining us. There's something that I did not cover that would be useful. Let me know in the chat box, and I can answer that. I will say something about our alumni. Given that our program is relatively short, right? So it's a 1 calendar year program. We're constantly finding ways to keep our alumni engaged, and so we're working to pilot where our alumni get kind of paired with our incoming students to help mentor them going forward. We also want to use the Action Design Philly meetups to have our alums come back and talk. We've already brought back 4 or 5 alumni this year already to talk and mentor with our students. So that is definitely an area that we're really looking to utilize. We have such great alums, we want to keep them involved. Okay, we've got some questions coming in. Acceptance rate of the program is a really tricky question. We're still new and in startup land, so I can give you some basics. So in year 1, we had about 100 applicants for about 40 spots. In year 2, we had, I think, 270 applicants for 60 or 70 spots. And this most recent cohort, we had about 350 applicants for about 80 spots. And so we definitely are getting more and more applicants, and the quality of the applicants are really, really, really high. We're looking for a diverse group, so we don't want only students coming from undergrad, we don't want only industry-oriented or only psych majors. We want really diverse representation to kind of go out into behavioral science and help shape the field. So it is definitely competitive, but you would get a very careful review from the committee. Word limit for a personal statement? No, there isn't. Being a bit succinct is helpful. So not going into numerous pages on and on and on, but I think whatever you need to kind of tell your story. Where did you come from? Why is the program right for you? How did you get interested in behavioral science? What do you think you might want to do with it? So however long that may take you to articulate that, that would be good use of your time. Also, if there is something notable, so we have a GPA requirement. You have to have a GPA of at least 3.0 as your cumulative final GPA as an undergrad for consideration. If there were some reasons for a low GPA, maybe your first year or two or something happened, you can add that into your personal statement so that the committee can at least review it and give a careful review. If you don't meet that 3.0 kind of criteria, it's very unlikely that you would make it to the next round. So that is something that they do look at. But if your most recent 2 years of GPA is above 3.0, even if your cumulative isn't, or maybe you did some graduate work and you have a GPA in graduate school that is much higher than when you're undergrad, those will definitely be weighed and factored into the conversation. CV, I think the one-page resume kind of approach, being more of a professional-based program, might be preferred, but we have had students submit more academically oriented CVs. I'm thinking of the hundreds and hundreds of applicants that apply to us. Selfishly, I like the one pages. And we have our students do them for the job market. We do a lot of resume reviews, so I think a resume would be slightly preferred. Speak a little bit about students who are offered interviews, the purpose they serve. Okay, so we honestly we have a capacity issue with the number of interviews that we're able to do. It's definitely something that if you seem like a good candidate and you tick off a lot of the boxes, it looks like it'd be somebody that we would want to be offering. That might be one way that it triggers an interview, so that we have an opportunity to see if the fit is there, if there's mutual interest. It might be if there is disagreement among the committee and we want additional information that might be missing, or that just might be useful for us in the decision-making process. So not everyone gets an interview. It's really a capacity issue. But there will be a subset of students that will get them for a number of reasons, either to determine fit or kind of to get for clarification's sake. International applicants, preferred source, translate undergrad scores. No, I do think based off of student feedback from the last year, using Certifile, which was through the application portal that Penn has, that seemed to work a little bit better than WES. I know there was a number of issues for Chinese students in WES that was a lot of delays. You're free to pick whatever you want, just make sure you leave enough time. We have to have that certification by the February 1st deadline or as soon as possible, because we have our academic committee, admissions committee meets February 2nd, the next day or that within the week. So just make sure you give yourself enough time to get it in. International students that complete degrees, bachelor's degrees in the US, yes, your TOEFL requirement is waived. Good question. If your WES converted GPA and undergrad GPA differ significantly, we use what WES tells us generally. It's kind of the way of standardizing it. If you feel like the WES GPA does not reflect your GPA for some reason, you can talk to the program about it, but we usually, whatever WES tells us, as long as there's no inaccuracies, that's what we use. And you have an opportunity to see the WES report, so if you see an inaccuracy, you can let us know. Part-time students, great question. So we, our cohort now of about 75 students, we have about 11 or 12 part-time students in this third cohort, and then we have another 12 or 13 part-time students from the years 1 and 2 cohorts. We are constantly finding ways to get them more involved. So these meetup events that we do in Philly, they're at night, And it's a great way for them to kind of interact with their peers. We share the email and communications of our part-timers who are taking classes so that they can get involved that way. We have them do some of these design challenges. They can be a part of them, particularly some of the external ones, because they tend to be nights and weekends. All of our core classes are at night. They're usually from 5 to 8 or 6 to 9 once a week. The electives on campus can vary dramatically, so sometimes they're in the mornings or a couple times a week. So we are a residential-based program. Most of our students are full-time, but we do have quite a vibrant kind of minority of part-timers that are getting more and more involved with us. Great question. Visiting campus. Okay, another great question. So this is another kind of bandwidth issue. Our students are only here for a year, and so having like hundreds of prospective students visit before their application is in isn't entirely feasible for us yet. And so we definitely coordinate with students when they are accepted in the program to come and to sit in on our classes, meet with our students, kind of that approach. So we will assist in that process in the spring. If you want to take part in our action design meetups that are more Philadelphia based, you're welcome to do that and join. We will have a research celebration event in December, early December, that will highlight our students' work, and that would be an opportunity to visit and meet with our students. So that would be a possibility. I also, in the weeks ahead, I have an online calendar system that we can get you access to. My Wednesdays will be more and more open for students to speak with me virtually, by phone, or in person. So you can do an in-person meeting with me. It's just I'm a bit protective of our students. They're very busy with everything that they're doing. And so we don't have them doing prospective visits until spring when we give out admissions offers. And, so that they can focus on their studies and design challenges and trying to make the world better. February 1st being the deadline. So February 1st being the deadline, admission offers tend to go out in the first rounds of them, at least, will start going out in early to mid-March. That will give the first round of students the opportunity to kind of weigh the decision. They will have until mid-April to accept or decline our offer, and then we will have a wait list that will be notified by, again, right around mid-March. And that will, by mid-April, the waitlisters will be updated on their status and what's going on, and we hope to conclude the process by May, but it varies. We're still new to this. Good question. Let's see. I've been out of college. So if you're a professional, if you've been a working professional for a number of years and you have a lot on your resume, you've done a lot of work, and you can articulate that really well in your resume, your previous schooling, your undergraduate schooling, may be weighed less compared to if you're a student coming right out of undergrad, you have very little experience in the world, you have maybe 1 or 2 internships and not a whole lot else. We definitely calibrate differently. So you're kind of compared against other undergraduate students. If you're an undergraduate student coming in, if you're from that pool, or if you're from the professional pool, you're kind of compared on what skill sets do you have, what GPA do you have, and again, your GPA is maybe factored a little less heavily if you're coming from industry. Great question. Grad GPA weighted more heavily than undergrad GPA. Great question. We definitely we don't have any kind of formal formula for it, but if you did well in your more junior and senior undergraduate schooling and the courses that you took and advanced courses, we see that quite favorably. And then if you have had an opportunity to take graduate classes, specifically relevant ones, and you did well with them, absolutely that would be beneficial to include in your transcript, in your application package. Any other questions? I'm going to take one more, and then again, you're more than welcome. One letter, great, letters of recommendation. One from industry, if you are in industry, or if you're an undergrad with kind of limited experience, one that can speak to your research skills or your work skills, and then have somebody else that can speak to your academic skills or your academic potential. So even if you've been in industry, they should be able to talk about like your intellectual curiosity, how you think through strategy and problems. So you can go that way. If you're an undergrad with pretty limited experience, you can have two more academically oriented letters of recommendation. For those in industry, you can do kind of like one and one. So I'm going to conclude this session. It's been really great spending some time with you today, but please feel free to reach out to us. You have our contact information that will go to our program. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. I look forward to kind of continuing this conversation with you going forward. Thank you for joining the Master of Behavioral and Decision Sciences information session. Take care.